Here in the chords tutorial, we're going to be looking at essentially the continuous MIDI object. This is the best way to make a chord in the terms of a long sustained chord because it's continuous MIDI. Okay. You'll note here that in the lesson I have placed out a few different types of scales, plotted them so that you can see it in the MIDI language of the numbers. The word play tells you the different numbers that if you were to play them sequentially would make the scale. In this case it's the pentatonic minor scale. Okay, we can tune continuous MIDI objects to that scale, which is great. What I placed here are 3 continuous MIDI objects that are all fed from the same bar. Let's load up a session. Okay, I'm not going to do the session design, so any old session will do. And now we can hear the results of a chord beginning to be present. In my controller, you'll see that all of the enable signals all come from the same source. Another way to do this would be from 3 different sources, 3 different continuous MIDI objects, and they would then play together in a chord when all 3 conditions are being met. This way we have is a growth into the state incentive. So when a person is at the threshold, they play the first note. When they're 20% below, they play the second note, leaving the first note on. And there on the third note is when they're 40% below the threshold. The note is when I go into the properties, you'll see, just like we have learned, that the note is a single set. You can change the pitch, that's fine, but it's not going to be very musical, okay, in a continuous MIDI object. So all I really have to do is feed the enable and define my note. In my musical scale, the first note was 60. In a pentatonic major scale, this is a 64. You can see it on the keyboard as a pentatonic major scale. There's 64 because it was a minor. On the image, it didn't say play there, but that's the neat thing about pianos. You can play different kinds of scales. Okay, and the last one is 67. A major in a pentatonic is first note, 4 more notes up, and then the 7th note up from the first note. So what's going to happen here? I have hit the threshold, it plays the first note. When I go past the threshold, 20% below the threshold, it plays the second note. The farther I go below the threshold, the higher the volume will go because I'm feeding the volume tab, and I'm saying that from 0 to 20% below, it's going to give me a volume from 30 to 100, and so on and so forth with each one of them. So it hits at a low volume, and as it continues further below the threshold, the idea is to reduce, I'm going to get a larger volume. Let's raise this threshold up so that the ratio, always relative to the threshold, will have more room to play. And now you can hear, right, I'm coming in on the 40%. So here's a little training trick. When you have a chord like these kind, you can turn off the threshold level and just have it only give feedback when there's 20%. You can turn off the 20% and really only have feedback come in at the key prime moments that the person is farthest below the threshold. Turn the bell on, and I've just got a basic feedback, good quality.